I've been excited. I've shared that with some of you. And my excitement this morning comes from my sister. It may sound a little weird, but Sheryl and I were my parents' only two children. And we grew up, obviously, as preachers' kids. And back in the day, they moved us from one town to the next because heaven forbid that a pastor should become too close of friends with the people in his community. And so I went from Rappeljay to Reed Point to Big Timber to Missoula, and then they went on to Canada, and then Oregon and California, and back to Oregon. But growing up in a family like that, it was fun. It was, for me, it was enough to convince me I did not want to be a preacher. Look what God did. He called me into it. Sheryl has never been married. She has taught children. She has been a surrogate mom to my kids, has watched over them in Oregon when I haven't been able to get there, and has just loved up on her students in her class for all those years. She is my inspiration. She really is. Mom and Dad had health issues, and she was the one that took care of them. She was the one that was the good child and did that. And as she will tell her story, and I've asked her to come and share her story, listen to her if you would, because all of us have issues in our lives and things that can make us go sideways at times. But she has a ministry of her own to so many people. And I asked her to come and share. John Wesley used to have that testimony stand. I forget exactly, he had a name for it. But every week somebody else had to stand up and talk about what God was doing in their lives. And we did that with Eldon a few weeks ago, and just tremendous reception to that. I'd like the rest of you to pray about it. I really would, because God has taken you through your journey for a reason. And it encourages other people. So, sis, would you come up here and share what God's got on your heart? Make sure you're on.
Don't want to be on.
Oh yeah. Okay, there you go.
All right, well, thank you. When Paul asked me to do this, it was kind of scary to me because I don't do this often. But us Lindley kids are kind of unusual. Strange, unique is a better word. You guys probably haven't need to tell you that. But first, I want you to introduce you to Ruth. This is my walker. You know the story in the Bible, where thou goest, I will go. So this is my my first walker was called Esther, for such a time as this. At that time, I thought maybe I'd be able to walk again, but after she passed, I got Ruth, and now she's staying with me for the rest of my days. And that's okay. I also have two canes, Cain and Abel. And I take those places where I have to do stairs and stuff, but I can do them with the help of Cain and Abel. So anyway, and I also name cars and do all other strange things. That's Nathaniel out there, and that's a whole God story in itself. The Nathaniel means gift of God, and that's what it was to me, because I can push a button and the back door opens for me, and I can get Ruth inside. I'm just so blessed. Anyway, I also do another strange thing. Instead of making a New Year's resolution, I always pick a word. Now, with God's help, I pick a word for the year. And so for that year, I concentrate and find verses on that and see what God has to teach me about. And in 2009, I picked a word. It was release. And I thought it was a strange word when I got it from God. I said, okay, whatever. And in that summer, I decided that I was going to retire from teaching because Mom and Dad were living with me, and it was so hard to teach all day long and come home and take care of them, and it was just exhausting. So I decided I was going to retire and then substitute and do other things and, take care of Mom and Dad. And I went to the beach that summer, and that's where I hear God best, is at the beach. Anyway, I was at the beach, and I said, God, what's my future look like? And I just assumed that release meant my job and whatever. He says, you don't need to know. I said, what do you mean I don't need to know? Because if he'd have told me, I'd have been scared to death. But anyway, he saw me through, and I went and told my friends at church. He said, what did God tell you at the beach? And I said, told me I don't need to know. And so, anyway, later that May, the next year, I got this thing called polymyalgia rheumatica. And it means your shoulders get really sore. And I had a terrible, I couldn't even lift up my hand to eat, which was horrible. I was in so much pain, I couldn't sleep in a bed because you can't try to get out of bed without using your arms because it was too painful. And so I ended up sleeping in a office chair for like a month. And I couldn't teach because I couldn't lift my arm and all that. So I finally got over that, and I got to go back to school. And like the first day I was back, I came home to fix dinner for Mom and Dad, and I had a horrible headache. And I couldn't get over it. I called my cousin. I said, what do you do for a headache? And sometime in that conversation, I hung up on her. And she lives in Portland, and she said, I can tell something was wrong with you. So she drove to my house, record speed across town. And when I got there, apparently I was convulsing and having all sorts of problems. So they called 911, and the ambulance came and took 6 ambulance guys and firefighters to get me on the gurney because I didn't want to go. Because I was really strong and stubborn, but that's not unusual for me. And because I have a lot of stubbornness. And anyway, so they took me to the hospital, and they did a CAT scan. And they found in that CAT scan that I had a brain tumor. And it was the size of a kiwi. And so they sent me up to OSHU and put me into a drug-induced coma. And I was in that for, I don't know, a week or so. There a lot of things happened there that I was unaware of. Paul and Michelle were there, and a lot of my other friends that I just thank God for, because I would never make it through without the support of my friends and family. Anyway, they finally did surgery on me, and sometime when they were digging that tumor out, I had a stroke. So when I woke up from my surgery, which took a lot longer than they expected, I found out that I couldn't move my right side. And I had a stroke, I couldn't move my arm, or I couldn't talk very coherently anyway. I still blame that for my speech problems. Oh, I had a stroke, so sometimes I just can't find the right word. Anyway, I never asked God why me, because why not me? Because the people around me all suffered, and I had gone 55 years without being sick or having any issues, and I thought, of course, it's my turn for a trial, I guess. So anyway, it took a long time before I was released from the hospital, and they released me and I went to a care center, one of those places where stroke patients go for rehab. And it was a tough time there, but my sweet cousin came almost every night and prayed with me, and that made so much difference. But I was in so much pain, and I couldn't concentrate, and I'd cry whenever they turned me over, and it was like, I was in a terrible shape, and I kept saying, God, what's going on? And they found out that I had a severe UTI. And once they got me on medication, after like a month, I finally started making progress. And I started speaking better. Never spoke well, but any better. And then my insurance ran out, so they said, you have to move. I thought, where can I go? So my cousin went looking for a foster care place for me. And she found, God led her to the perfect place. She walked in, and the caregiver was sitting at the table with a Bible open. And she's such a sweet Christian lady. Her name is Cornelia. And I was at her place. I went from my care center to her foster care. And it was a wonderful place. And the best thing about that, I guess, is that it made me stop and take time with God every day. I was getting kind of lazy about that. It was kind of a hit and miss. If I had time, I'd pray or have my devotions. But after I had my stroke, I had all this time. So I started really diving into the Word deep, and it was a wonderful time. And I still keep in touch with Cornelia. She's such a neat lady. And one day my physical therapist walked in carrying a walker. I thought, who's that? Who's going to use that? She goes, this is for you, Sheryl. You mean I can walk? And I was so excited. And then that day I walked around the counter in the kitchen. I thought, this is really cool. And I got better and better. And a little while later, they signed me up to go to Rio, which is a rehab center in Oregon. And it's intense therapy. And it was like 6 hours a day. But you stayed in the hospital, and for 6 hours a day you had therapy. But it was really, I really appreciated it. And I also, at that time, realized how blessed I was, because a lot of the people in rehab were missing arms and legs, and it was just so sad. It broke my heart. But I thought, you know, God spared me from all that. So I just look at it as a blessing. And after I got out of that place, I went to an independent living place called Sheryl, and it was a wonderful place. They have, anyway, I won't go into that, but one of my therapists said, you know, they have left foot drives, because by that time my arm was working pretty well, and I got my speech back, and I said, you mean I can drive? And yes, so I took driver's ed at the age of 56 or whatever I was at the time, and because I never took it in high school. And I found out that I could get a left foot drive on my vehicle, so I went down and passed my test, and so I felt so much better, so I could drive and so much more independent. And during that time, I had to put my dad in a care center, which broke my heart, but you know, he needed it, and I couldn't take care of him anymore because of my stroke. And so put Dad in the care center, and Mom and I moved back to our home. And Mom lived with me for 2.5 more years before I had to put her in the care center. But through all that, I guess probably the hardest part was, for me, being dependent on other people, because I'm such an independent lady. We call it hoy at my house. Get hoy. My grandpa Gates used to always say, you're as stubborn as a hog on ice. So I took hog on ice, got hoy out of it. So when I'm really stubborn, I say, oh, got the hoy going. I used to say that to my mom too. Sometimes she got really stubborn. I'd say, Mom, hoy, hoy. So anyway, God has always been there with me. And like I said, depending on others is what's really hard, and it still is. You know, when things happen around the house and I can't fix it myself, it's really hard for me to call on someone to let them come and help. But I know that God's teaching me something there too as well, to depend on Him. And I try to remember how blessed I am. And one of the ways I do that is I blow bubbles a lot. And so there are bubbles out in the foyer in a black case, so help yourself as you leave. And when you see something that you're blessed or you want to thank God, blow a bubble, because it just blesses my heart, and I'm sure it blesses God's. Thank you.
Do you see why she's my inspiration? A lot of things when we grew up were different between us. I had opportunity to go to some pretty high caliber universities and schools. I was scared to leave home. I could have gone to Stanford. I could have gone to the Coast Guard Academy. I could have gone to Dartmouth. And instead, I went to the University of Montana.
Go Grizz.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with that. It had a lot more to do with my mom's cooking and the fact that I could stay at home and have the security of my own place. And I could, what money I earned, I could spend on any way I wanted. Sheryl got through high school. She's 2 years younger than me. And she decided, she just poof, took off to Oregon, went to George Fox College out there. And I asked her not too long ago, I said, how could you do that? how could you just leave like that? Because I couldn't. And she says, well, I got tired of always, people would say, oh, that's Arvid's daughter, or that's Paul's sister. And she said, I was always in somebody else's shadow. And I thought, how sad it was. Because I don't throw much in shadow. And I did that, and so I stayed home. And a year later, after Sheryl left, Mom and Dad said, I don't think Paul's ever going to leave home. So they moved to Canada. True story. But I showed them, I moved over with my aunt. Still didn't launch, that failure to launch movie, right here. But as I thought about that, it was like, oh, what difference do we make in life? And we have these equations of, you've got to have this and that. And one of the stories I'd like to share this morning is when Sheryl was at Cornelia's, she had not been out to get her hair done at a beauty salon since she had had her stroke. So, this was a long time. And there's something ladies write about feeling better about yourself if your hair's all fixed up. And so Bev and I were out there and we said, let's see if we can talk her into going in our car. So we were able to get her in our car and we went down, and the first beauty salon that I saw, we stopped at, and I went in and I said, could you help us out? My sis is here, just had a stroke, needs help with a walker. Could you guys do her hair? And this one beautician was there. She said, I used to work as a CNA at a nursing home. Oh, you bet, bring her in. And it's like, wow, how did that happen? She went in and she had her hair washed and curled and all fixed up and pretty. And so then I said, where do you want to go eat? Because she hadn't been out to eat for months and months. And so we went to Buffalo Wild Wings. And we went there and we sitting at this table, and this young Hispanic man walks by, and he looked at Sheryl, and he stops, and he comes back and says, are you Miss Lindley? And she said, yes, I am. And he said, you were my third grade teacher, and it's because of you that I am a teacher today. And I thought, how could God have orchestrated that? And yet, isn't it amazing what God can do to us and for us? I look at that, and Sheryl has said, well, I've never had any kids. And it's like, time out. How many kids were in your class? Because she was in a tough school in Portland. And so it was full to the brim all the time. 30 kids a year. How many years did you teach? 30. Okay, that's 900. And those kids became hers. They came from tough families, and when they couldn't afford jeans or their clothes were falling off of them, sometimes she duct taped them, sometimes she stapled them back together, but when she went and did her Christmas shopping, guess who got new clothes? The needed kids. And I look at that, and it's like, we need that message in our world today. We really do. And so I am so thankful for you, and yes, so at this point, I don't know what to do. I'm looking at the clock. Those of you in the back couldn't hear her. I said, what should I do? And she said, preach. I don't know that I want to do that today. You have the outline for next Sunday's sermon in your bulletins. I can't help but believe that somebody here was touched by the fact that Sheryl told her story. How many times do we think that we are taken out of the game because our health isn't right, we're too old, we're too young, we have too much baggage, we've been through, everybody knows about my past, Maybe we've had tangles with the law, who knows? But God specializes in using people and what it takes to speak to us. The sermon I had intended to preach this morning was from Exodus chapter 3, and that was my title, The God Who Delivers. God got a hold of Moses on the backside of the desert after he had for 40 years been raised in the palace of Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt. He saw somebody beating up on one of the Hebrew slaves, and so he killed that guy. It got out that he was a murderer, and so he ran for his life and spent the next 40 years in the desert. And so if I went to U of M and I was a math major. 40 plus 40 is 80. How's that for math? 80 years old, Moses is out with these sheep. This old guy is out there just hobbling around. And there is a bush that is burning but isn't burned up. He had to go check it out. You know the moral of that story? God can use anything that He wants to get our attention. It can be a burning bush on the backside of the wilderness. It can be a stroke on the year that I'm going to retire from school. It can be a heart attack when you're 48 years old. It can be the loss of a child when they shouldn't have died. But God can use those to get our attention. Because God's words to Moses were these: I want to be with you, I will never leave you, and I have a plan. So we're going to talk about, I'm preaching on the fire of God, and obviously this one will be the burning bush next week. But would you stand with me and we'll conclude with prayer this morning. Our Heavenly Father, as we come at the close of this service again to you, I thank you for Sheryl and her life and her willingness to share the difficult parts of it. I thank you that you have used her in such a mighty way. I ask that you would continue to do that. And maybe her story spoke to some of the people that are here. I know it spoke to me. And help us to realize that you can use us in the most unlikely areas and ways. Ask that you be with each person that's here. If they don't know you, maybe they realize that you're a God who wants to rescue them and reach out. But we ask that you would draw us closer to you and closer to each other. And we just thank you for this day. In Jesus' name. Amen.